Hello, everybody. My name is Rui, and today's talk will be split in two parts. So I will try to first introduce some of the challenges that we face on the financial industry and for which we use data to try to tackle them. And then Arnault will make these more interesting by showcasing a specific use case, which will be the senior creditor officer. So, as promised, I will try to introduce the size of the problem, and the size of the problem is almost $2 trillion a year. So this is the amount of money that flows into the banking system, dirty money, and is so huge that it corresponds to approximately 2.7% of the world's GDP. So as you can see, the issue is big. And then why should the banking industry be worried about this? Because in the end of the day, this is money that flows into the banking system and generates revenues. So there are mainly two reasons. The first one is obviously the fees. So European Central Bank and the Fed in US are always trying to monitoring the banking transactions, and they will apply fees when something is not properly done. And I would say that more important is the scrutiny of the media. So the banking system is still an industry that is based on trust, and there is no bank that wants to have their name associated to some scandal about money laundering or evasion of taxes. And how are we ensuring this? So basically, what we want to ensure is financial security. So sorry about that, we will not speak about our financial security. We will speak how the banking systems will secure their transactions. And we ensure the financial security by properly managing the risk of our clients. So how can we manage the risk? So one of the major steps in the banking is what we call know your client. And this is the phase where we try to collect all information about the client that is possible. It is mainly split into three main areas. So the first is the client identification, and is mainly when the client first approached the bank. Obviously, then we have the due diligence, because we still need to continue monitoring the client along the life cycle of our relationship. And obviously, the third one is an enhanced due diligence that is enforced for clients of higher risk, such as politically exposed persons or situations of increased risk. So this is our goal, and this is the phase where we obtain all the data that we will then be used to calculate the risk management. And why is this challenging? So first, it is challenging because we are a worldwide banking. And as a worldwide banking, we need to enforce a lot of regulations. So there are regulations in Europe that are different from the ones in the US, that are different from the ones in APAC. And we obviously need to build systems that, depending on the region that they are operating, comply with different regulators that are there in place. Then, obviously, we have multiple business lines with multiple products that will enforce different client profiles and different client needs. So the complexity and the number of different variants of the problem starts exploding, and that's why this is a really challenging problem. Obviously, in the end, we also face a problem that I believe is common to most of the applications, which is volumes of data that are increasing exponentially, but at the same time, its quality is not accompanying that trend. So we often have bad data quality in huge volumes of data. This means that we are still doing this as a human task, but obviously with the help of computers to help the officers. So, what are the main building blocks that we are using to try to achieve all of this? So this is just a few, we have more, but just for you to give an example, we have obviously data enrichment, because not all the information that we need are retrieved directly from the client. Sometimes we need to monitor the media, we need to monitor ONGs in order to find if the client is behaving properly or not. Obviously, there is the data extraction. So anybody, when he goes to a bank, he needs to upload his passport, his ID, his licensed driver. So we can automatically extract that information to the system without having a human in between to do this parsing. And obviously, we have one important problem, which is the entity matching. So basically, we live in a world where the legal entities do not have a worldwide unique identifier. So it's really hard for us to figure it out if the same company A and B are the same. So for instance, we can write the name of a company IBM, or we can write International Business Machines. So they are the same company, and we need to somehow to match that IBM and International Business Machines are indeed the same company. So we do this in the entity matching part. And obviously, as an output, we have sentiment analysis that will act upon media and ONG's papers, for instance, as well as other inputs, and recommender systems that will help then the human to achieve its final decision and to give the output of the process of the KYC. Obviously, all of this is under the umbrella of the explainability, which means that not often we can use the latest deep learning models because somehow we will need to explain why the officer reached to that decision. And say that, I will now hand over to Arnault, which will travel us through a traditional journey of a credit officer.
Thanks, Rui. So here we're going to see a specific business case. To start with, I'm going to explain you for, if you're not familiar with the banking industry, what does a credit officer. We wanted to improve that credit process. So the main responsibility will be to review the loan requests, assess the client's financial status, as well as reviewing the internal ratings. So there will be different mandates. One of the mandates of the credit officer is to do annual review, meaning reviewing all the different events that happened for the past year, and as well as doing some day-to-day monitoring. If there is like downgrades of ratings or M&A, for example, that will happen, or change of CEO, needs to be aware because he can take some preemptive actions. Okay. So right now, what happens is that every different credit officer, they are very experts on their fields, but not really into machine learning and data science. So basically, they would go to different websites, get some information, newspaper or something else, and then go for a credit decision. So we wanted to bring some technology here to manage to reduce the time to market for decisions. Okay, so the idea here, again, as Rui mentioned, is not to have like a decision maker credit decision. It's really to help, to bring some guidance and to bring some help to the credit officer. Because in the end, it will be the one who makes the decision. For example, there are some, in general, in terms of risk management, you want maybe to do a trade with a counterparty, maybe not solely for this trade, because you want to create like a relationship with your company. So this is kind of thing that is very difficult to model. So there will be always the last one to take this decision. So we came up with this tool called Risk News Aggregator. So basically, this is an application that provides all the news organized by score to give insight directly to the credit officer. So instead of going to different multiple places to gather information, he will be able to see very quickly everything that is contained in his portfolio. So all of the credit officers have maybe 20, 25 counterparties that they are looking at, organized by sector. So it can be oil and petrol or car industry. And they will need to know what's happening on this kind of sector. So really the idea is to give some preemptive actions by filtering all the amount of data that we have and to give them some insights to optimize the time to process the information. Maybe something is happening and you want to reduce the credit lines. So this is the workflow, basically, to show what is happening in the application. So we are using a data provider, giving us some news every hour. So here is the first challenge that we faced, that we mentioned earlier, is how can we link all the data that we receive to the counterparty names in our portfolio. So some of them has some primary keys, but maybe 25% miss them. So we need to do some fuzzy match to be able to map what do we see in the news and what we have in our portfolio. On top of that, we want to have those information already labeled. So we need to use some natural language processing to extract all the information. what is the entity? What kind of event does it relate to? Is it like, for example, is it the revenue will be below the expectations? What is the meaning of these articles? And we will classify them. On top of that, we will have some scoring for this information in terms of risk and reliability as well. It will be ingested in our tool. You can set up some alert generation based on some sentiment score, and it will directly alert the credit officer if something is happening on the market. The other way is just to have this dashboard prepared for each of the credit officer to be able to see if there is any information impacting badly their portfolio. So this is how it looks like. So the idea is really you open the tool and you have everything already available for yourself. So on the left panel, you will have the company set up for the credit officer. So basically everything that is in his portfolio. Okay. You can filter as well the information by events. Maybe you're only interested on the downgrades on Moody's rating and you want to see who is impacted. You can maybe look at a specific kind of business in Portugal or in Spain, so you can filter by country as well. Or you can only look at score. So for example, you want to see what is going on with all the companies flagged as a very bad credit score for today. You can as well filter on news because you can, for example, if you're doing annual review, you want to see what happens in the last 12 months. If this is your day-to-day activity, maybe you're going to just check what happens in the last couple of days. On the right panel, so you will see all the news ranked by importance for you. So you can sort it the way you want, basically only your industry, the companies that are on your portfolio, and you can click here to see directly the article that should be the most impactful for your portfolio. So you can see that on the right. And finally, what you see in the middle is the tree map, where the surface of the area will be the volume of data right now in the news. And the color will represent the credit score that is related here. So in just one snapshot, you can see to whom, which company is today in the news, and is it positive or negative sentiment score on the company. And finally, you will see the credit score that we see on the top with the evaluation of your portfolio for the selected period of time. So for each of those companies, we have a credit score, sentiment score set up. So the way it has been done is basically using a technique called expert consensus. So we're going to gather all the different experts on a topic. So here, credit experts, and they're going to review all the different events that can happen from change of CEO, the revenue is below the expectations, everything that can have an impact on the financial status of this company. And then they will basically map the different events to a specific score. So if we take into account, for example, let's say results are below the expectations by 5%, they would say it's 0.35. This is minus 10%, it will give you a score of minus 0.5. So then we get a grid, and we'll be able to interpolate basically and map this article to a very specific score. You have credit score, sentiment score, sustainability score as well, interest rates and risk. We are mainly focusing right now on credit. It's really a new tool, so we can add more, but for now, this is what we are currently doing. And so, data science. So on top of that, in sort of ranking, our data science team tried to use the different information that we had and weighted them to basically, by credit officer, rank all the information that will show up. So it will be combined with when was the last time it happens, how many news do we have today for this information, and the quality of score as well. So is it an article talking about merger and acquisition, but is it something that just happened? Is it an opinion or is it a forecast? So all those kind of information, we need to take them into account to know what is the quality of the source. And it will be taken into account for the recommendation. Those kind of recommendations will not be done by credit officer, but by group of credit officer following the same kind of industry. Because you don't want to basically introduce some bias in the recommendation. If a credit officer is always coming to Financial Times to look at information, always looking at the same kind of information, we don't want to repeat that. We want to be able to provide more data that is currently looking at. And finally, we are planning to add a new BNP like in-house score on top of that to be able to try to see in advance when we need to change our internal ratings on top of the one provided by external. So this is a great tool. Now the question is that in every industry, what is the cost reduction by using this kind of tool? It's not easy to answer because we are not only talking about specific transactions, but talking about taking into account those news to take some preemptive actions in case of a bad credit events on the markets. So it means that we can reduce our credit lines, for example, and reduce our loss if something bad happens. So what we are currently doing is doing some backtesting to see if all the emails, for example, that have been sent to credit officer, indeed in the market was linked to a downgrade of rating, for example, or bankruptcy for a company. Thank you.
Okay, we have some questions from the audience. The first one is, how critical is the result of the model to the decision of a credit officer? What is more important, the result or the reason why the model decided?
So basically, as I was saying, the credit officer will always has the last thing to say, and he will be the one who takes the information. We are doing some backtesting as well because we want to be able to monitor the results and just to make sure that the model is good. But in the end, the credit officer will have always the last word, basically. So this is the most important thing: is to take the right action and trying to improve as well the model. But yes.
Okay. The other question is, given the expected decrease in quality of public data online, especially with the advent of the LLMs that produce incorrect but good-looking texts, how do you expect that to affect applications like the news aggregator?
Yes, I can take that one. It should affect, definitely, because probably we'll need to take more careful about the source of the data that we are getting, okay. And making sure that the source of the data is some credible media press and not some random website that we can find in the web.
Okay.
So I think that the most of the challenges there will be to be more strict on the source of the data than to be more open in the data gathering and then try to act after. Because I believe acting after will be more challenging than constraining the inputs from the start.
Okay, and I think all of us are expecting that we have a kind of a seal saying this is false or this is generated by LLM or something. Maybe that can help in this case. How do you measure the succeed of the new aggregator in improving the decision by the credit officers?
I'm sorry, I can't.
How do you measure the success of the new aggregator in improving the decision made by the credit officer?
Not an easy one. We're building the tool right now. So it's really the first attempt to provide those kind of information. So it's really new in the banking industry. So we're working closely with the credit officer to know what information can improve their decision making. But so far, we're trying maybe to develop some new scores, like more BNP internal, specific to our needs.
Okay. How does the BNP Paribas scoring complement the credit scoring?
Sorry?
How does the BNP Paribas scoring complement the credit scoring? I don't know if this is clear to you.
Credit scoring.
Yes, because we get a credit scoring from some of our data providers, but we build some on top of that. We did some backtesting on the credit score from our data provider. It was highly correlated with ours, but we wanted to have those basically using our experts. So it will be like very tailor-made for our use.
Okay. How do you build backtesting data to forecast a numeric measure of impact on sentimental analysis for news aggregation regarding political, climatic, and operational risk?
Sorry, how do we?
How do you build backtesting data to forecast a numeric measure of impact on sentimental analysis for news regarding political, climate, and operational risk?
So basically how we transform the text that is in those news into a number.
Okay.
If that is the question, so that is how the model works, I guess. No, even if we are working with the text, we will need to apply embeddings that will translate the text into numbers. And from there on, we are already in the numbers world.